The words rang in my head long after she walked away, leaving her half-finished glass of wine in the sink. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet you get when money buys thick rugs that swallow sound and doors that close soft. I stood in the kitchen, breathing in the trace of her perfume mixed with lemon oil from the counters I had sanded myself the week we moved in. Those counters had never caused an argument. Everything else had. I pressed my palm to the drawer at my knee and slid it open. Receipts sat inside like a paper spine. Her graduate program's tuition, which I paid in full after her scholarship fell through. $48,700 for the white SUV she insisted she needed for work events. Title in my name because her credit had been too messy at the time. A $3,600 camera for her personal brand that now gathered dust in the closet. A dozen boutique swipes that never ended up in her closet, only in stories about gifts from friends. I was not blind. I was just busy enough to act like I was. The phone buzzed on the counter. "Work dinner. Do not wait up," the text read. We were no longer in the stage where she lied with creativity. Her lies had become short and casual, the kind of comfort that only comes from betrayal that has settled into routine. In its own way, that was worse. I turned the kitchen light off and walked down the hall to my office. The room smelled of pine and printer ink. On the top shelf sat a folder labeled DEED/LLC. The house had been mine 2 years before the wedding. I had tucked it under a boring LLC my accountant set up, a shell with a name that meant nothing to anyone but me. The operating agreement held one crucial line that never came up in conversation. The manager is me, and only me. Every mortgage payment had cleared from my business account. I had built kitchens for other couples, measured to the 1/8 of an inch, and those checks had built this roof over my head. Her words were not just arrogance. They were a dare. My answer would not be spoken. It would be a plan. The first step was simple. Stop feeding what hurts you. I logged into the bank and downloaded 6 months of joint account statements. My stomach tightened as I highlighted the 1:12 a.m. charges at a rooftop bar, the 9:41 a.m. coffees for 2, the spa day that landed on the same weekend I had canceled a fishing trip to drive her mother to an appointment. I saved the files twice, then removed her as an authorized user from my credit card. No text, no confrontation, just a click. The second step lived in a shoebox on the top shelf of the closet. Warranty cards, velvet pouches, receipts for jewelry I had bought her when I still believed us meant the same thing to both of us. The slips bore my name, the only name that mattered legally. What had once been gifts now felt like breadcrumbs marking the path I had taken. I will not lie and say I was perfect. I missed anniversary dinners to pour concrete. I tracked sawdust into the house and left the garage a mess. But I also paid the rent on our first place while she figured out her career. I covered her dental bill when a cap cracked. I put her on my health plan when her short-term contract left her uncovered. People say love is work. In my world, love also wrote checks. At 10:38 p.m., the house creaked and settled. Upstairs, the shower hissed. I could map her rhythm by water pressure alone. The city hummed outside, muted by the double-pane windows I had installed last winter. I scrolled her Instagram for a few seconds before forcing myself to stop. Pain you can prove is useful. Pain you cannot is poison. I opened my email instead and drafted a message to Marla, my lawyer. Need a personal consult. Tomorrow morning, if possible. I hovered over send. Then I stopped. I wanted evidence, not just suspicion. So I closed the laptop, powered down the phone, and slid into bed before she came out of the shower. When she climbed under the duvet, smelling faintly of someone else's body wash, she did not say a word. The next morning I left before sunrise, as usual. By noon the crew and I had cabinets hung and the island set, every line level. Work gave me relief. At 12:17, my watch buzzed. A text from an unknown number. A pin drop, no words. It landed on a hotel 12 minutes from our house. The second text came seconds later. A screenshot of my wife's message to a contact saved as N. Room 814. He's gone. Doors cracked. I packed my tools, set the screws in their bins, and drove away. In the truck, the world narrowed to the hotel, the map, and the words I had heard last night. You will not leave me. You need me. I parked 2 blocks away and walked. The lobby smelled like citrus and money. The elevator climbed, and my jaw locked with every floor. At 8:14, I waited 10 seconds, then pushed the door open with 2 fingers. Her shoes were the first thing I saw. Red heels tipped on their sides, like a child had dropped toys after play. Voices came from deeper inside, low, familiar. Her purse sat on the chair, her phone face down next to a room service tray. A suit jacket draped over a lamp, initials stitched inside the collar. NRI did not shout. I did not break. I took one photo of the scene. Jacket, purse, heels, tray. Then I lifted her phone so the lock screen lit up, capturing my unread message. Pick up milk? The bathroom door opened. Steam drifted into the hallway. I was gone before it reached me. Back in the truck, I forwarded the messages to my private email, then saved them into a folder marked Clock. My hands were steady. The hotel shrank in the mirror as I turned onto the boulevard. The plan was no longer theory. It was an itinerary. At the red light, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was not from the stranger. It was a calendar invite forwarded to me by Lauren, like she always did when she wanted me to know her. Important events. Black tie gala, end of the month. Host, Newfield Ridge Capital. Keynote, Nathaniel Rhodes. I tapped accept. My thumb press felt like a door locking shut. The hotel was behind me now, the lies clearer than ever, and I knew exactly where I needed to go next. Marla's office would be waiting, and this time I was not walking in as a contractor with a dispute. I was walking in with the evidence of my own marriage crumbling. The envelope in my hand felt heavier than paper. When Marla looked up from her desk, she already knew this was not about remodel contracts or late suppliers. Her office smelled faintly of cedar polish and coffee, sunlight slanting across the blinds. A row of thick casebooks sat behind her, spines cracked from years of use. She gestured for me to sit, her expression calm but sharp. "Tell me," she said. I laid everything out, the receipts, the bank statements, the photos from the hotel room. My words came out steady, like I was walking a client through blueprints. She listened without interrupting, tapping her pen against a yellow pad, sketching the outline of a case as if it were a floor plan. When I finished, she leaned back. "You have what most people never manage," she said. "Evidence. And more important, you prepared in advance. The house in the LLC. The receipts in your name. This is a legal chessboard. You already control the center." Her words settled into me like bolts locking into place. For the first time since that night in the kitchen, I felt not just suspicion or rage, but structure. I was not a man lashing out. I was a man building something deliberate. We began with the accounts. I told her I had already pulled the statements and saved duplicates. She nodded and instructed me to close every joint line, one by one. Not as a sudden slash, but as a careful sequence, each move documented. "Judges hate rash acts," she said. They respect clean records. You want to look like the man putting things in order, not the man exploding. Next came the assets. The jewelry receipts, all in my name. The SUV, title mine. The camera equipment, pricey and unused. These are not sentimental gifts anymore, Marla said. They are transferable assets. You liquidate them properly through consignment or resale with notarized slips. Once they are gone, they are untouchable. Her words landed with the same clarity as level lines on fresh drywall. I thought of the shoebox in my closet, the velvet pouches I had once placed there with the hope of celebrating us. Now they were nothing more than entries in a ledger. By the time I left her office, I had a checklist instead of chaos. Close lines, transfer assets, notarize receipts, build the file. Each step was solid footing. That night, Lauren was in an unusual mood. She hummed softly as she scrolled her phone, silk robe slipping at the shoulder. "Nathaniel's firm is hosting the gala," she said. "It will be the event of the year. Black tie, press everywhere. You need a new suit." I nodded, as if I had not already seen the invite, as if I did not already know the man behind the initials NR and the jacket slung over a hotel lamp. She smiled, touching my arm. "This is important for me. For us." Her touch felt like a prop in a play. I looked at her hand, manicured and practiced, and felt the weight of the file upstairs pressing down heavier than her words. Over the next week, I moved piece by piece. I met with a consignment dealer, presenting each item of jewelry with receipts attached. He checked the stamps, confirmed the authenticity, and drew up contracts with a 40-day window. The anniversary watch, the Christmas necklace, the graduation earrings, all cataloged, all barcoded, all placed in his safe. He asked if I was certain. I told him yes. He notarized the slips. Money landed in my LLC account 2 days later. The SUV followed. I contacted the dealer, showing them the title. A buyback was arranged, fair percentage, cash wired. Watching the vehicle roll away was not loss, it was recovery. The garage stood wider, cleaner, as though it had been waiting for the space to breathe. Lauren noticed. "Where's the car?" she asked, standing in the driveway, her brow creased. "I sent it for service," I answered evenly. She paused, then nodded. She never pressed hard when the explanation sounded expensive. Quietly, deliberately, I continued. Each move documented, each transfer sealed, each account fortified. The shoebox on my closet shelf grew lighter by the week. My name, not hers, grew heavier on every ledger. Still, the hotel photos haunted me. Not because they hurt, but because they were a script waiting for the right stage. Evidence on its own was cold. Evidence revealed at the right moment was power. The gala loomed larger every day, a date circled not for celebration, but for unveiling. Marla's voice echoed in my mind. Let her climb. The higher she gets, the harder she will fall. So I waited. One evening, while she zipped a dress for yet another work dinner, I sat in my office, scrolling through the photos one last time. The red heels tipped over like abandoned toys. The monogram stitched inside the collar. The lock screen glowing with my unread message. They were no longer wounds. They were blueprints. She called down the hall, "Do not stay up late." Her words floated on the air, casual, careless. I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. She believed I needed her. But every receipt, every notarized slip, every closed account told me the opposite. And when the lights went up at the gala, she would learn that truth in front of everyone she thought mattered. The idea of the gala lingered in my head like scaffolding waiting for walls. It was coming, yes, But there was work to be done before I could step into that ballroom with my case solid. Lauren thought I would be her arm candy, the dutiful husband in a rented tux. She had no idea I was building something under her feet, brick by brick. And when the night arrived, the ground would give way. The next morning, I spread the documents across my office desk. Receipts, contracts, account statements. Each pile had its place, each folder labeled with dates. It looked less like a marriage and more like a job site. Measurements, cut lines, material orders, progress notes. I knew how to finish projects. This one would be no different. At the center of it all was the prenup. We had signed it in a bland office before the wedding, when she still smiled at me with the bright charm of someone who believed marriage was an upgrade. At the time, she had shrugged, said, "You have more than me. It makes sense." The language was clear. The house remained separate property, owned by the LLC in my name. Any appreciation in its value belonged to the LLC, not the marital pool. Business assets were untouched. Only income earned jointly could be considered, and even then, only what had not been earmarked for taxes or reinvestment. I ran my thumb over the embossed seal on the copy I had kept. This was not just a clause. It was a cornerstone. The house, the garage, every cabinet I had hung with my own hands, they were shielded. She had smiled through that signing, not realizing the wall she was agreeing to build around herself. From there, I moved to the accounts. One by one, I closed joint lines and transferred balances to the LLC account or to my business checking, where payroll from my crews landed, each move documented, each confirmation slip tucked into the growing folder. Lauren still swiped her card, still tipped waiters with the breezy entitlement of someone who thought the money would never run out. What she did not know was that her access was narrowing by the day. Payroll separation came next. For years, I had kept my contracting business straightforward. Jobs billed to clients, checks deposited, payroll handled by a service that cut wages for my crews and a draw for myself. Now I changed the structure. My draws were moved into a new account, sole access mine. The old account was left open with a token balance, just enough to look like nothing had changed on the surface. I did not announce it. I did not explain. I simply built a wall between her and every dollar I made. At night, when she breezed in late from dinners and strategy sessions, she sometimes glanced at me with a faint frown, as if she felt something shifting beneath her, but could not place it. Then she would kiss my cheek and head upstairs, phone clutched tight. One evening, after she left for another event, I sat in the office with a different task, planting the truth where it would matter most. Nathaniel Rhodes' company, Newfield Ridge Capital, had a spotless reputation in the financial press. But reputations are only as clean as the people who carry them. Lauren was reckless. But Nathaniel was ambitious. Men like him did not survive scandals well. I drafted an anonymous packet. Nothing dramatic, no accusations written in heat. Just the photos, the receipts, the proof of late-night charges and suspicious withdrawals, all tied carefully with dates and times. Enough for someone in HR to see the outline of a problem, not a jealous husband's rant. The trick was not to scream. It was to whisper in the right ear. I mailed the packet to the HR director of Newfield Ridge. No return address, postmarked from a neighboring city. The kind of envelope that would arrive on a Monday morning and ruin the taste of coffee. It was not revenge. Not yet. It was groundwork. Days blurred into quiet moves. Jewelry sold, car bought back, accounts split. Lauren kept planning outfits for the gala, chirping about photographers, about how the guest list was a who's who of the city. I smiled when she showed me dresses. nodded when she spun in the mirror. Every word she spoke was a brushstroke on the canvas she thought she was painting. She never noticed I was building my own frame around it. Late one night, I sat at my desk scrolling through her phone logs. Not hers directly, I would not risk tipping my hand. But the billing records tied to our account. Patterns emerged like footprints in wet cement. Calls late at night to the same number. Midday gaps that aligned with hotel charges. One name, over and over, N. I stared at the pattern until my jaw ached. Then I did something I had not planned. I sent a message. Not to Lauren, not to Nathaniel, to a different number I had found linked to him in public records, his fiancée's. Her name was Claire. Her address sat neatly in a real estate registry, a house across town with a small garden and 2 cars parked in the driveway. My message was short. You do not know me, but you should know about Lauren. Room 814, photos attached, dates available if you need them. I hesitated only a moment before pressing send. The reply came the next evening, long after Lauren had gone to bed. My phone buzzed once on the nightstand. A single line glowed in the dark. Meet me, tomorrow, noon. I need the truth. I stared at the screen, the words burning into the quiet room. This was no longer a solitary plan. It was an intersection. Another player had entered the board, and with her came the chance to break the game wide open. The next day at noon, I parked 2 blocks from the cafe Claire had chosen. It was one of those places designed for quiet meetings, soft lighting, white cups stacked neatly, the hiss of an espresso machine covering conversation. I sat in the truck for a full minute before going in, my thumb pressed against the phone where her message still glowed. I need the truth. She was already there. Brown hair pulled into a clean knot, blazer too sharp for casual lunch. When she saw me, her eyes flicked once to the folder in my hand, then back to my face. She was not here for introductions. She was here for confirmation. I sat down. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and set it on the table between us. The lock screen showed Nathaniel's photo with her, smiling at some gala years earlier. "Show me," she said. I slid the folder across. One by one, she looked at the photos. The hotel room, the shoes on the carpet, the jacket over the lamp, the purse, the text screenshot. Her hand tightened until her knuckles whitened, but she did not cry. She was the kind of woman who saved tears for privacy. When she finished, she closed the folder and handed it back. "The dates," she said quietly. I opened my notebook. September 14th, October 3rd, November 22nd, and the text, February 9th. There are others, but these line up with charges on our joint account. Spa, rooftop bar, boutique shopping. She pulled out her phone again and began swiping through her calendar. September 14th, she murmured. He told me he had to fly to Dallas overnight. October 3rd, client retreat in Aspen. November 22nd, he missed my father's birthday dinner. February 9th. He said he was in New York until late. Her jaw clenched. Every one of them a lie. Our eyes met across the table, and in that silence the betrayal bound us together in a way no friendship ever could. 2 strangers yoked by the same wound. "What do you want?" I asked her. "The truth, and for him to pay for it." Her voice carried no theatrics, just steel. I told her about the gala, about my plan to let the room itself reveal the story. No speeches, no shouting. She nodded slowly, as if fitting her own anger into the blueprint. "They'll both be there," she said. "He has been bragging about the keynote for months. She has been bragging about being on his arm. She looked at me then, and for the first time, there was something like sympathy in her eyes. "I imagine this hurts you." "It used to," I admitted. "Now it just costs." That earned a thin, humorless smile. "Yes," she said, "it costs." We talked logistics. She would gather her own receipts, her own alibis twisted by Nathaniel's stories. Together we could cross-confirm every gap, every lie that stitched our two lives together while unraveling theirs. We would not meet again until the gala. One clean strike. When we stood, she shook my hand like a partner signing a contract. "Thank you," she said, "for not letting me stay blind." I watched her walk out into the winter light, shoulders straight. She was not broken. She was preparing for war. Back in the truck, I sat with the engine idling. This was no longer just my story. Claire's involvement widened the stage, doubled the evidence, and ensured the blow would land harder. Lauren thought she had built a private escape. Nathaniel thought he had constructed a double life. Together, they had built a gallows. That afternoon, I made another move. The estate sale. For years, I had kept furniture, tools, and spare fixtures from jobs stacked in the garage and back rooms. Lauren had called it clutter. I called it savings. Now it became leverage. I scheduled a weekend estate sale under the LLC's name, advertising through local listings. By law, proceeds tied to company property were business income, not marital assets. I spent 2 nights tagging items, stacking boxes, sorting through the garage she had always hated. Every tag was a small act of detachment. The armchair from our first apartment, the side table I built in trade school, gone. Not because I could not bear to see them, but because I would not let her touch them when the walls caved in. When the buyers came, I stood by the driveway greeting them like clients, explaining wood types, pointing out craftsmanship. Each dollar tucked into the lockbox felt like reclaiming hours of my life. By dusk, the garage was almost empty, echoing in a way that felt clean. Lauren barely noticed. She was too busy fussing over dresses for the gala, debating colors with friends on speakerphone. "It has to be bold," she said one night. "Something that photographs well." I carried a box past her into the garage. She did not look up. The SUV buyback cleared the same week. The wire hit my account, and I forwarded the slip to Marla. "Keep stacking the paper trail," she said on the phone. "Every sale documented, every transfer protected. When the storm comes, you will be the man standing with receipts while she drowns in stories." Her words steadied me. It was not just about punishing Lauren anymore. It was about protecting myself from the chaos she would try to spin when the truth hit the air. By the end of the week, the garage was bare. The consignment dealer had sent the second advance, and my accounts were walled off like a fortress. The only joint line left was a checking account with a modest balance, the one she used for groceries and incidentals. I let it sit, a decoy more than a resource. But Lauren was not as oblivious as I thought. Late one night, after she believed I was asleep, I heard her footsteps creak down the stairs. The fridge hummed as she opened it, then clicked shut. I listened to the faint sound of typing, the pause, the low sigh. Curiosity kept me still, my breathing even. Minutes later, she padded back upstairs. When she left for her meeting the next morning, I checked the account. The balance had shifted. A withdrawal labeled transfer. Emergency fund appeared in the ledger. She had moved $5,000 out, straight into a savings account. But she did not know that the savings account was one I had closed 3 months earlier and rerouted under my own control. Every cent she had moved was already mine. I stared at the screen, the numbers glowing back at me. And for the first time in weeks, I laughed. Not the laugh of humor, but of clarity. She thought she was moving behind my back. She thought she was clever. In truth, she had just delivered her last hidden stash directly into my hands. The game was no longer about suspicion or preparation. It was about timing. The gala was days away. The stage was set. And now, even her secret cash was already in my pocket. I sat in my office the next morning with the blinds tilted halfway, light striping across the desk where the folders had grown into a fortress. Paper wasn't just paper anymore. Each notarized slip, each buyback receipt, each scanned PDF on my hard drive. They were bricks in the wall between me and Lauren. When I tapped the lid of the shoebox that had once rattled with gifts, it no longer felt like guilt. It felt like victory. But victories need structure, not chaos. So I made a list. 1. Seating chart. 2. USB drives. 3. Notarized duplicates. 1 copy for Marla, 1 sealed in a safe. 4. Contingency plans if Lauren sniffed too close before the gala. The seating chart mattered because this gala wasn't just another party. It was a staged arena. Newfield Ridge Capital prided itself on its precision, its pageantry. Everything from the lighting to the table placements was designed to project control, which meant I needed to know where Nathaniel would stand, where Lauren would smile, and where the spotlight would fall when the evidence slipped into the right hands. Claire, cool and silent as ever, had already texted me her access credentials, fiancé perks. Through her, I got a copy of the preliminary seating. Nathaniel, front and center as keynote. Lauren on his arm at the head table. That alone was enough. Their names in ink together, a public declaration of what they had pretended was private. 2. USB drives. I bought them in bulk, slim black sticks that could be tucked into an envelope or slid into a jacket pocket. Each one held the same package. Photos, receipts, timelines. No labels. Just cold files. I formatted them twice, encrypted the folder, and tested the autoplay. When opened, the slideshow rolled with dates stamped, images crisp, numbers visible. No context needed. Anyone in that ballroom could see the pattern and understand. 3. Notarized duplicates, Marla insisted. Judges love paper, she said. Screenshots can be faked. Paper holds. So every receipt was stamped, every consignment sale certified. I stored 1 set in her office safe, another in a deposit box under the LLC name. The originals I kept in the folder by my desk, though the truth was I barely touched them anymore. The copies were the weapons. The originals were trophies. 4. Contingencies. Because Lauren wasn't a fool. She was careless, yes, arrogant, yes, but not blind. Already she had started asking little questions, the kind that flutter around like moths before fire. Didn't we have more in the joint account last month? She asked one evening as she poured herself wine. Property taxes, I said, without looking up from my laptop. Oh, right. She swirled the glass, satisfied enough. Another night. Where's the bracelet you gave me for Christmas? Getting cleaned, she tilted her head, studied me for a moment, then shrugged. She had never valued the bracelet for itself, only for what it proved she could demand. But she was circling. By midweek, the house felt like 2 stages overlapping. Upstairs, Lauren practiced poses and gowns, texting friends about photographers. Downstairs, I stacked USB drives into envelopes labeled with names of board members, donors, journalists, each one sealed with tape, ready to slip into a pocket or a program book. I worked quietly, carefully. If she noticed nothing more than the hum of a man preparing for business. The pressure built not because of what she said, but because of what she didn't. She had stopped asking where I was during the day. She had stopped commenting on the absence of the SUV or the cleared shelves in the garage. It was as if she was conserving energy for something else. And that silence was louder than any suspicion. On Thursday night, she came into my office unannounced. Her perfume reached the room before she did. She leaned against the doorframe, silk robe sliding at her collarbone. "You've been working late a lot," she said. "Busy week." Her eyes scanned the desk, the folders, the laptop, the neat stack of envelopes. She smiled, slow and deliberate. "You always were the planner." I closed the folder nearest to me. Someone has to be. For a moment her expression hardened, then softened again into the mask I used to love. "You know," she said, walking closer, "I've had people tell me I could do better, that I should be with someone more ambitious." She touched my shoulder, nails grazing lightly. "But I always told them you were solid, dependable, safe." Her hand lingered. Her eyes searched mine, as if weighing whether the charm still worked. I didn't answer. She leaned closer, voice dropping. "Of course, if you ever stopped being those things, I could tell a very different story. About late nights, about accounts, about what you do with cash that never makes it to the books." Her smile widened just enough to show teeth. "People believe wives. Courts believe wives, even if there's no proof." Then she kissed my cheek, too soft, too staged, and then drifted out of the room. I sat there long after she was gone, her words echoing louder than the hum of the desk lamp. It wasn't just a threat. It was her first move. She was trying to remind me that she had weapons too, that she could spin lies into the kind of truth that ruins reputations. What she didn't understand was that lies without evidence are just smoke. And I had built myself a fortress of stone. Still, her words sharpened me. I pulled open the folder, checked every notarized slip again, verified each USB stick, recounted the envelopes. She thought she could burn me with smoke. At the gala, I would bury her in concrete. Friday came, and with it, final confirmations. Claire texted me one line. "I have everything. Ready. The estate sale. Proceeds hit the LLC account." The consignment dealer messaged that the second auction cycle had cleared. Every dollar was mine, locked and sealed. Lauren, meanwhile, was radiant. She paraded through the living room in a crimson dress, holding it against her body, spinning in the mirror. "Perfect, right?" she asked, not even waiting for my answer. "Perfect," I said flatly, though in my head the word carried a different weight. Perfect for a reveal, perfect for a downfall. By Saturday morning, the envelopes were loaded into my briefcase, stacked in perfect order. The USB sticks gleamed like small bullets. The notarized slips were sealed in duplicates. Everything was ready. Lauren breezed past me on her way to another appointment, humming, phone buzzing in her hand. She didn't notice the way my eyes followed her. She didn't see the briefcase. She didn't hear the click as I locked it. She thought she had threatened me into silence. What she didn't know was that she had only accelerated the countdown. The gala was no longer days away. It was hours. And this time, I wasn't just bringing a plan. I was bringing her ruin, packaged and sealed, ready for delivery. The night of the gala arrived draped in cold air and streetlights. I stood in front of the mirror, knotting my tie, watching my own reflection with the kind of detachment a carpenter has when measuring the last board before it is cut. Lauren swept past me in crimson satin, hair-pinned, lips dark as blood. She barely glanced at me, too busy checking her phone for updates from her friends already arriving at the venue. You look sharp, she said absently, fastening her earrings. I met her eyes in the mirror. So do you. She smiled, but it was a smile meant for photographs, not for me. The briefcase waited by the door, black leather polished, envelopes stacked inside like bullets in a magazine. I carried it myself, refusing her offer to have it stowed in the trunk. She didn't ask why. Maybe she thought I had client paperwork tucked inside, some contract I couldn't leave alone. Maybe she didn't care. The drive was short, but heavy with silence. Lauren scrolled through her phone, angling her screen away from me. I let her. Tonight was not about catching her lies. Tonight was about detonating them. The hotel glittered against the skyline, banners draped from its facade, spotlights sweeping the night sky. Valets jogged across the pavement, collecting cars, ushering guests inside. Men in tuxedos, women in gowns that shimmered under the lights. It looked like a coronation. And in a way, it was. For Nathaniel, this was supposed to be his triumph. For Lauren, her chance to parade as the chosen one on his arm. For me, it was the scaffold. Inside, the lobby smelled of citrus polish and money. A string quartet played near the grand staircase. Lauren's hand slid into the crook of my arm, not out of affection, but because it completed the picture. Flashbulbs popped as photographers snapped the arriving couples. Her smile was flawless, her posture perfect. She leaned toward me just enough to sell the image of a loyal wife. I smiled too, because I knew in a few hours those photographs would be relics of a lie. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and white-draped tables. Place cards guided us to the head section, just rows away from the stage. There he was, Nathaniel Rhodes. Tall, tailored, grinning as he shook hands with donors and executives. His fiancée, Claire, was nowhere in sight yet. But I knew she was coming. She had promised. Lauren's eyes lit up when Nathaniel spotted her. He inclined his head slightly, a private acknowledgement no one else seemed to notice. She beamed back, glowing in crimson. To anyone else, it might have looked like simple recognition. To me, it was confirmation. I settled into my chair, briefcase at my side. The program booklet lay neatly folded, my name printed under spouse. I flipped it open, slid an envelope into the fold, and closed it again. One by one, discreetly, I repeated the motion. An envelope in a booklet on a plate. Nothing rushed, nothing suspicious. By the end of the first course, 5 envelopes had left my briefcase. By dessert, another 6. Each envelope contained the same thing, a USB drive and a single notarized page listing dates and amounts. No accusations, no commentary, just facts. Lauren never noticed. She was too busy sipping champagne, laughing too loudly at Nathaniel's jokes, touching her hair when he looked her way. Halfway through the evening, I caught sight of Claire. She had arrived quietly, slipping into her place at a distant table. She wore black, understated, but her eyes met mine across the room. A nod. Nothing more. Enough. When the speeches began, the lights dimmed. Nathaniel took the stage, applause swelling like a wave. He launched into his keynote with polished confidence, weaving figures and forecasts, making promises to investors about growth and stability. The crowd hung on his words, charmed by his poise. Lauren sat forward in her seat, glowing with pride as if his success reflected her own. Then it happened. A rustle of paper, a phone lighting up, then another. Across the room, board members and donors began sliding USB sticks into laptops, flipping open booklets, a whisper spread like fire catching dry grass. Heads bent, brows furrowed. A gasp broke the hush. Lauren frowned, glancing around, Sensing the shift but not yet understanding, she leaned toward me. What's going on? I kept my face neutral, eyes on the stage. Nathaniel faltered. His words caught for the briefest second as he noticed the ripple moving through the crowd. He pushed forward, voice tightening, but the room was no longer his. Screens glowed with photos. The jacket draped on a lamp. The shoes on the carpet. The receipts. The dates. And then Claire rose. Calm, deliberate. She crossed the room with a folder in hand, straight to the front row where the board of directors sat. She handed it to the chairwoman, then stepped aside. The chairwoman opened it. Silence followed, heavy as stone. Nathaniel's voice broke mid-sentence. His eyes darted across the crowd, confusion hardening into panic. Lauren shifted in her seat, her hand clutching my arm. What's happening? She whispered, voice sharp now, strained. I turned to her finally, my voice low, steady. The truth. Her eyes widened. For a second, I saw it hit her. The realization that the ground beneath her had shifted, that this wasn't some private dalliance anymore, that her lies had grown too big to contain. On stage, the chairwoman rose, interrupting Nathaniel. She leaned toward the microphone. We need to pause. Murmurs swept the room. Security stepped forward, discreet at first, then unmistakable. Nathaniel tried to protest, his voice rising, hands gesturing, but the board's faces were stone. Lauren's breath quickened beside me, her nails digging into my sleeve. Then the final blow. The chairwoman turned back to the microphone, her voice crisp. Mr. Rhodes, please step down. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, phones snapping photos. Security moved in fully now, guiding Nathaniel off stage despite his protests. He glanced once toward Lauren, eyes pleading, but she froze, caught between standing with him or sinking in her seat. Her crimson dress, so carefully chosen, now blazed under the harsh light like a warning flare. The quartet struck up again, desperate to drown the chaos. But the damage was done. Lauren looked at me then, her mask shattered. You, she hissed under her breath. I didn't deny it. I didn't need to. The room spoke for me. The photographers, sensing blood, circled the stage. Claire stood to the side, arms folded, expression unreadable. Nathaniel was gone, swallowed by the side doors, escorted out by security. The board shuffled papers, already discussing succession, damage control, containment. And in the center of it all, Lauren sat in crimson, trembling with rage, her hand clutching mine as if to steady herself. But I didn't return the grip. I leaned close, my voice low enough for her alone. Remember what you told me? You won't leave me. You need me. I paused. You were wrong. She recoiled as if struck, her face paling under the chandelier's light. The gala continued around us, the music louder now, the guests buzzing with scandal. But for us, the evening was over. The lie had been buried under the weight of truth, and the empire she thought she stood beside had crumbled in a single hour. I rose, picked up the briefcase, and left her sitting there, alone in the glow of cameras that no longer adored her. Outside, the night was cold. The city hummed beyond the hotel entrance. I breathed in the air, steady, measured, as if the world had just reset itself. In the distance behind me, I heard her voice call my name once, sharp, desperate. I did not turn, because tonight was not the end. It was only the public collapse. Tomorrow would be the aftermath. And that was where the real reckoning would begin. Tomorrow came heavy with silence. The kind of silence that follows an earthquake. Birds still, the streets hushed, people whispering in shock at what has already fallen. Lauren and I drove home from the gala in separate cars. I knew because hers was not in the driveway when I pulled in. And when she finally did arrive, headlights washing across the garage, she didn't come inside for nearly 20 minutes. She just sat there in the driver's seat, engine off, phone glowing against her face. When she did enter, she didn't speak. She went upstairs, the crimson dress rustling against the banister. I heard the closet door slam, then the muffled sound of her crying, or rage. It didn't matter which. I slept easily that night. By morning, the fallout had already begun. My phone buzzed with messages from contractors and clients who had seen the headlines, "Keynote ousted in scandal. Board removes Rhodes amid personal misconduct allegations." The evidence had spread fast, faster than I expected. Screenshots, copies, whispers leaping across email chains and group chats. Everyone who mattered knew. Everyone who mattered was already cutting ties. Lauren came down late, sunglasses on despite the dim kitchen. "We need to talk," she said flatly. "Yes," I agreed. "We do." But I didn't sit at the table like she wanted. I slid an envelope across the counter instead. The top page bore Marla's letterhead. "Petition for divorce," she read out loud, her voice cracking mid-word. Her head shot up. "You're filing?" "I already filed," I said. "That's just your copy." She tore the sunglasses off, eyes bloodshot. "You can't. I can. And I did. The house is under the LLC. The SUV buyback is closed. The consignment sales are documented. The joint accounts are already drained into protected lines. You'll have counsel, of course, but the paperwork is already in motion." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. For once, no words came. I left her there in the kitchen, clutching the envelope like a lifeline that was actually an anchor. The next weeks unfolded in precise steps. Court filings, asset disclosures. Marla at my side through every motion, her voice calm, surgical. Lauren's lawyers blustered about equitable distribution. But they kept hitting walls. LLC ownership predating the marriage, notarized receipts for every consignment item, bank records tracing each transfer back to my separate accounts. Every time they thought they had a thread, it unraveled in their hands. Meanwhile, my accounts swelled. The estate sale proceeds landed in the business account. The consignment checks cleared. The SUV's buyback payout transferred cleanly. I watched the numbers climb with the same satisfaction a craftsman feels when the level bubble sits perfectly between its lines. Lauren's circle shrank, just as predictably. Invitations stopped. Group chats silenced. Friends who had once cooed over her gowns at brunch now ghosted her calls. Even her mother's texts grew clipped, cautious, aware of how deep the scandal had sunk. She walked through the house in silence, a ghost in designer slippers, clutching her phone as if it still held escape. One evening, she finally broke. I was in the office reviewing another set of documents when she appeared in the doorway, hair unkempt, mascara smudged. "Please," she said, her voice shaking. "One more chance. We can fix this. We can go to counseling or start over or just stop all of this. I'll be better. I'll be anything you need." I looked at her for a long time. Once, those words might have cracked me open. Once, I might have reached for her hand. But now they sounded like an actress auditioning for a role she had already lost. "You had your chance," I said quietly. "You had every chance." Tears spilled, but I didn't move. She sobbed into her hands, crumpling against the doorframe. I turned back to my papers, because this wasn't about heartbreak anymore. This was about closure. The final closure came 2 weeks later. It was a cold Monday morning when Marla called. "The wire cleared," she said. "Which one?" "The surprise." Her tone carried satisfaction, like a chess player delivering checkmate. The parcel sale from the Ridgeview development. You bought it back through the LLC 3 years ago, before the marriage. Quiet little lot, remember? You listed it last quarter. Closed on Friday. The buyer's funds just hit your account. I had almost forgotten. A narrow strip of land I had picked up cheap when a developer went bust, written off in my mind as dead weight. Lauren never even knew it existed. And now it had sold. For 6 figures. Clean, documented, mine alone. I sat back in my chair, the phone warm in my hand, a smile breaking across my face. Not because of the money, though the money mattered, but because it was the final thread, the last surprise, the move she never saw coming. Lauren came into the room moments later, eyes swollen, lips pressed tight. She must have sensed something had shifted. "What is it?" she demanded. I looked at her, steady. The last piece just fell into place. Her face drained of color. "What do you mean?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The balance spoke for itself, the final wire sitting like a full stop at the end of our story. She stared at me, trembling, realization dawning that every escape had closed, every account had been turned, every plan dismantled. For weeks she had clung to the idea that she could talk her way back, charm her way into forgiveness, spin some narrative that painted her as the victim. But numbers don't weep, receipts don't lie, and bank wires don't bend to crocodile tears. The marriage was over. The money was gone. The circle had abandoned her. And the man she bet everything on had been escorted out of his own gala in disgrace. I watched her crumble in front of me, not with rage this time, but with emptiness. And I felt nothing but release. Because in the end, revenge wasn't fire or fury. It was precision. It was patience. It was the steady hand of a man who finally stopped looking away. And now, with the last wire cleared, all that was left was to close the clock I had started on the night she told me I would never leave. The last wire cleared, and suddenly the weeks of chaos sharpened into a single point. Signing day. The courthouse was gray stone, cold in the morning light. I arrived early, Marla at my side, her portfolio under her arm. Lauren came later, stepping out of a car with a lawyer who looked too young to shave properly. She wore black this time, not crimson, her hair tied back too tight. For once there was no mask, no smirk, no pretense of control. Only a woman staring at a finish line she never thought she would see. We sat across from each other in the conference room, the table long, the silence longer. Papers shuffled, pens clicked, the bailiff reminding us of procedure. "Do you understand the terms?" the judge asked. "I do," I said. Lauren hesitated. Her voice cracked. I do. The pen shook in her hand as she signed, her initials scratching across each page like someone carving their own name into a gravestone. She didn't look at me. Not once. When it was done, the judge nodded. Dissolved. That one word carried more weight than all her threats, all her smiles, all her lies. We rose, chairs scraped back, papers gathered into folders. Lauren lingered, staring down at the empty surface of the table, as if hoping something would appear there to save her. But nothing did. Outside, the air was cold but sharp, the kind of air that wakes you clean. Marla clapped me on the shoulder. "You're free?" she said simply. Free. The word settled into me slowly, like water soaking into dry wood. For months I had lived in plans, traps, documents, countdowns. Now, there was only quiet. That night, I walked the house one last time. The house I had built before the marriage, the house I had protected through every storm. Hardwood floors I had sanded, walls I had painted, counters I had shaped with my own hands. Every corner carried a memory, some good, most poisoned now. Lauren's things were gone, boxes hauled by movers under court orders. But echoes remained. A faint perfume in the closet, a scuff on the baseboard from her heels, empty spaces where her clothes once crowded the racks. The quiet was almost painful, because for the first time, it was entirely mine. In the kitchen, I opened the drawer where it had all begun. The receipts, the silent paper trail of sacrifices that built the scaffolding of my revenge. It was empty now, cleared for court filings, but I could still feel the weight of them, the way each slip had been both proof and betrayal. I poured a glass of water, leaned against the counter, and listened to the house breathe. That was when I heard the knock. I opened the door and found her there. Lauren, not in gowns or heels this time, but in a simple coat, her hair loose, her eyes swollen. She looked smaller somehow, as if the scandal had carved inches off her frame. "Please," she whispered. "Just 5 minutes." I didn't answer, but I stepped aside. She came in, clutching her coat around her, scanning the empty spaces. "It looks different," she said softly. "It looks honest," I replied. She flinched, but pushed forward. "I made mistakes. I know that. But we had years together. We built a life. You can't just erase it." "I am not erasing it," I said. "I am ending it." Tears welled again. "I have nothing left. They won't take my calls. And Nathaniel's gone. My friends turned their backs. My mother barely speaks to me. You're the only one who knows me. The only one who could understand." I looked at her then. Really looked. For years I had bent over backwards to keep her comfortable, to shield her from consequence. And here she was, finally stripped of her masks, raw and pleading. "You said once I would never leave," I said quietly. "That I needed you." She nodded quickly, desperate. "Yes, and you do. We need each other. We can start again." I shook my head. "No, Lauren. What I needed was peace. What I needed was respect. What I needed was love that wasn't a ledger. And now I have peace, because you're gone." Her lips trembled. "So that's it? After everything?" "That's it," I said. She sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. I let her cry. I let her sit in the silence she had created. Then, when the sobs finally slowed, I opened the door. "You should go," I said. She looked up at me, eyes hollow. "Where will I go?" "That," I said, "is not my problem anymore." She stood, slowly, dragging herself toward the door. At the threshold, she turned once more, searching my face for some crack, some opening. There was none. She stepped out. The door closed behind her with a soft click that echoed louder than any slam. I exhaled. The clock I had started that night, the night she looked me in the eye and said I would never leave, stopped ticking. The line had been crossed, the end written. And for the first time in years, I felt light. The house was mine. The accounts were mine. My life was mine again. I walked into the office, opened my laptop, and deleted the folder labeled clock. Every backup, every duplicate, every piece of evidence I had carried like a shield. I erased it all. Not because I needed to hide it, but because I no longer needed to carry it. It was over. I poured another glass of water, stepped out onto the porch, and watched the night settle over the neighborhood. Families laughed in the distance, children's voices rising and falling. Life kept moving, and so would I. Revenge hadn't burned me out. It had built me back. It had shown me the cost of looking away too long, of loving someone who only loved the reflection in a mirror. And now, walking back into the house I had built with my own hands, I felt something I had not felt in years: freedom. If you liked this story, subscribe and tell us your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next one, click on the box on the screen.